Hello, everyone out there in Maryland's beautiful 8th Congressional District and all of our friends in other parts of Maryland and other parts of the country. It's Jamie Raskin coming at you from the 8th Congressional District for my favorite time in the week, Local Hero, when we get to recognize the people from Maryland's 8th Congressional District who are making life better for people here and for people all over the country and all over the world. And I've got a remarkable local hero for you today because she is both a hero to people in our community, but a hero to people in the country and people really all over the globe. So please welcome as our local hero, Thea Lee, who became the Deputy Undersecretary for International Affairs at the Labor Department in May of 2021. But she's been an advocate for workers' rights, for the right to organize, for the rights of collective bargaining. For more than 3 decades, she was president of the Economic Policy Institute, which is a pro-worker Washington think tank before that, and she was an international trade economist at that think tank in the 1990s. Also, she's worked at the AFL-CIO, but she's been centrally involved in working to uplift the condition of working people in our community, across Maryland, across the country, and across the world. So for all these reasons, Thea Lee, you are our local hero this week, and we salute you.
Thank you so much, Congressman, for having me here. What an honor and what a pleasure to be in conversation with you today.
And I should say that I know you guys, well, sometimes you're in Washington where you're working, but your time in the 8th District is spent in Cascade, Maryland, in Frederick County, and we're very proud to have you here. So your work has been all about empowering working people. Tell us how the empowerment of working people in Maryland is connected to the empowerment of working people all over the world.
Thank you so much for that question. This is something I think about all the time, that my work is around global workers' rights, about making sure workers can organize a union without interference and that they're not subject to discrimination or child labor or forced labor. But when we think about the kind of world we want to live in, we think about the kind of labor market we want in the United States, we can't get that if we are embedded in a global economy where workers' rights are trampled on, where people can't exercise their own human rights at the workplace. So we are connected through the global economy to workers all over the world. And we used to say in the labor movement, an injury to one is an injury to all. And I think we saw that a lot during COVID. We saw that when, let's say, immigrant workers in Singapore all caught COVID, it affected our supply chain here in the United States. But it's also true that we're all in competition at some level, especially in the manufacturing sector, when American workers want good jobs, they want to organize a union, they want a pay raise, they want healthcare, they want retirement benefits. If they're in competition with workers who are thrown in jail or beaten up or fired for trying to organize a union, that makes it all the tougher. So that's why it's important in its own right, because it's important to lift up workers' rights and to make sure that workers can exercise their human rights. And then it's also important because we are connected to each other through trade, through travel, through international finance. And we know that that if we can't protect working people around the world, then we can't protect working people at home either.
And the degradation of worker rights in other countries, whether it's Mexico or Venezuela or Brazil or China or whatever it might be, Singapore, the erosion of working standards, paying people slave wages, sub-minimum wages, not recognizing healthcare rights, not recognizing occupational safety standards and so on. When that happens abroad, it exerts a downward pressure on those standards in America, right? And because our workers are essentially put into competition with workers who are far cheaper because their rights are being violated.
Exactly. And when I worked at the AFL-CIO, people used to sit at the bargaining table and literally across the table would be a corporate leader saying, hey, we're not going to give you health care because we don't have to pay health care in country X. And you can't have a union here because we know that if we move this, we close this factory down and move it to country X, the government has assured us there will be no unions, that anybody who tries to unionize will be thrown in jail. So it degrades what we try to accomplish here and what we believe in here, what our principles and our values are here in the United States when that happens.
So give us a sense of what the labor agenda is in this difficult political environment we're in. I mean, are you able to make progress through executive action? What is it we're able to do in Congress now?
That's a great question. And actually, I think there are a lot of tools that we have in our toolbox to protect workers' rights globally. And this administration is really committed to doing that. We have, obviously, Secretary Walsh, Labor Secretary Walsh is deeply, deeply committed to protecting workers' rights, but also the U.S. Trade Representative, Ambassador Catherine Tai, is crafting a worker-centered trade policy. And we see that kind of commitment throughout the administration. But we have labor provisions and trade agreements already that we are enforcing. So one of the things our agency, ILAB, the International Labor Affairs Bureau, is tasked with doing the research about child labor and forced labor throughout the supply chain. And part of our job is to make sure there's more transparency so that corporations are not able to have child labor or forced labor in their supply chain and sell it to American consumers without people knowing. But we also have free trade agreements like the US-Mexico-Canada agreement, which has very strong labor provisions. And one of our jobs is to make sure that workers in Mexico are aware of their rights and that the government has the resources it needs to implement a very ambitious labor law reform, and that workers can form unions of their own choosing and have that knowledge. So we have that, and we also have other trade-related provisions that it is our job to monitor and enforce the labor standards and trade agreements, and then also to engage with governments, to engage with corporations, to expose problems that we find and to publish them. So I'm very optimistic that right now there is both energy, there's commitment, there are resources to do this work.
Well, Thea, that gives me a lot of confidence that we can make progress today, even in a surly political environment. And it makes me really proud as your representative in Congress to know the great work that you're doing on behalf of the majority of Americans who are working class people who need all of these protections that you're talking about. So thank you for what you're doing for America. Thank you for what you're doing for workers' rights around the world. And for all these reasons, although your reach is international and global in nature, you are our local hero for this final week in January.
Congressman Raskin, thank you so much. And you are my hero. So it's a pleasure to be here with you today and to have this conversation.